Is it? There we are. Perfect. So yeah, so I approached Radmila to talk about maybe we could do something in terms of just having a bit of a discussion about teaching the lower levels and something we can all kind of share some ideas, because it's one of the more, maybe for the newer teachers among us, it's one of the most difficult skills, right? Is teaching the lower levels in terms of grading language and stuff like this. Yeah, how do you simplify your language to a lower level for the students? Now, for those of us who maybe have an understanding of Spanish, it's not too bad because we know the cognates, right? So I know, for example, Georgina, you speak Spanish, right? And so you know the words that are similar between the two languages, between English and Spanish. And so I'm sure when you're teaching a lower level, for you that's a good help, because you know, okay, if I say this word, it's going to be very similar, or it is the same or very similar in Spanish. And so if I give this word as a definition or part of my explanation, then the students are going to understand it. Now, you know, maybe if a person doesn't have an understanding of Spanish, and they don't know the words that are similar, and so they find it more difficult. And that can be one of the challenges that we all have if you have a student, I don't know, for example, from Russia, and you know you don't speak Russian, and their level of English is very low, then you don't know the words that are similar, so you then need lots of visuals, lots of pictures, you know, and this type of thing. So for those of us, like I say, who've got Spanish, then we have a little bit of an advantage in that respect, because we know the cognates, we know the words that are similar between the two languages. And actually, that's something that I often do with the lower level students, and it appears in material from time to time. But even in classes when I haven't got material dedicated to that, sometimes I like to look at the cognates and show the students at a P2 level. I like to show the students, okay, so you've got all these words that are, you know, the CION in Spanish is the TION in English. And I like to go over lots of the cognates with students. And so, like I say, I think it's something, and for those of you who are creating material as well, I think it's really important for us all to know how to simplify texts, how to make them easier, how to make them understandable. Because one thing I've been noticing, and maybe you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree, I find sometimes that the texts in the topic activities for P2s often can be quite difficult. They're often quite challenging for the students, you know. And so I think it's something that I wanted to talk about and discuss with you guys is how maybe we can come to an agreement, no, and find an answer that, okay, this is the type of, these are the tenses that we're going to agree that we can use for P2 level. This is the type of vocabulary, etc., etc. Yeah. I don't know. Does anybody, Georgina? Do you have many? Do you have many lower level classes, or your classes, do they tend to be quite with higher levels?
No, I have a bit of everything. In fact, I
Yeah.
just finished a level 2 class, and I've got 2 women. Oh, like
Yeah.
different classes, but it's true. Sometimes when I select the reading texts, number one, I try not for them to be too long. So if they're
Yeah.
more than like 8 lines, I just completely don't choose them, don't pick them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah.
sometimes sometimes I say like a topic activity for a P2, and the topic's great. Like, it's a good topic. It's something that we can talk about, but the text is just really either well, long and very complicated for the level, like you mentioned. And it's like, it's a bit of a shame then, because you think, I've got this cool idea, someone's created a really cool activity. There's some, you know, there's a good topic there. We can have a good talk about it after, but the text is just like, it's impossible to use for that level of student. And so that's something I think everybody we need to just have a discussion about it, and try to all improve in that area, you know. So what I thought I was going to do, I took a look at 2 P2 classes that I have for next week. And I looked at some of the well, how do you say, the texts that I have for the 2 classes. And so I wanted to read you the opening paragraph of 2P2 texts that I have for next week. Yeah. So let me find the first one. I'll find the first one, and then And then I'll tell you the second one. And I thought we could have a little bit of we could compare the two and see what you thought. Like I say, I'm not going to read the whole text. I'll just read the opening paragraph. Yeah. So the first one I've got is, some cultures are known for partying a little too hard. This, of course, can involve binge drinking and, in some circles, recreational drugs. More often, this kind of irresponsible problems cause a major hangover and possibly memory loss. Google has launched a Wikipedia for nightlife that allows users to relive or piece together their nights out by sharing photos, memories, and tracks with fellow clubbers. Okay, so that's the first one. And then the second one is, the US President, Donald Trump, uses Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram a lot. He writes his ideas and opinions on many things. Now Trump has a problem. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram banned him. He cannot use the platforms. They say that Trump is dangerous. So they were the two texts. They're from two different classes that I have next week, two different P2 classes, and I just selected two of the topics randomly. So what about then if we think about those two texts? Yeah, Mari Carmen, can I come to you and see what you thought was the biggest difference that maybe you noticed with the two texts?
Hi, Rob. Yes, definitely. Well, if I was to choose one of them too, for example, for the P2 class, I would choose the second one because it's got shorter sentences.
Yeah.
That I think, for some reason, I think the first one is a bit over P2, according to me. Whereas the second one, the vocabulary and especially the structure, I think is more like to be a P2 level for easier understanding.
Absolutely. You mentioned the first thing that I agree with 100% was that the text, the sentences in the second text were shorter. Yeah, so it said things like, the US President Donald Trump uses Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram a lot.
That's it.
Full stop. He writes his ideas and opinions on many things. Full stop. Now Trump has a problem. Full stop. Twitter, and and it was all kept in the present. Present simple. So he writes his ideas. He cannot use the platforms. They say that Trump is dangerous, no? Whereas in the first text, even the first sentence, I think when I think of some of my P2 classes, even the first sentence, some cultures are known for partying a little too hard. Like already they're going to struggle with that very first sentence. Then it says, this, of course, can involve binge drinking and, in some circles, recreational drugs.
It's also like the vocabulary is kind of like binge drinking and
so absolutely. Go on, Georgina.
I said that the first, even the vocabulary is kind of maybe too advanced.
Yeah absolutely. So for example, instead of saying this of course can involve binge drinking, you could say something like, this includes drinking a lot, for example. And already, instead of talking about this of course can involve binge drinking, if I say this involves drinking a lot, the students are going to understand that, or it's easier for them to understand. So we have to be careful with the tenses, but as you mentioned, Georgina, with the vocabulary as well, and the type of language that we're using. Binge drinking is, or even with the verb to binge, is something that I've covered with kind of P4, P5 students. Never with a P2 really. I think it's too difficult for them. So the idea is that we can that we need to create kind of a what you call it, like we could come up with a list together of things that we think that that should be included, or that we should or we shouldn't do in a P2 class, right? So Georgina, I'll come back to you quickly. What would you mentioned there about the vocabulary? So in terms of vocabulary, what would you recommend?
Well, the phrase would always be, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it.
They recommend where? Wait, I don't understand the question. Recommend like in general or?
Yeah, like in general. Yeah. What would you say? So obviously keep vocabulary simple, right? For the P2s.
I don't like. For me, I would say, imagine that you're talking to like a smaller child. So, like maybe to like 6-7-year-old child. Just adjectives wouldn't go beyond good, bad, that kind of thing. Like maybe talking like a vocabulary that has to do with like the root, like your day-to-day lives, maybe.
Yeah.
No, and then I wouldn't go into talking about complex ideas. I talk more about things that I can see, that I can feel, that we can, relate to, and not in terms of like concepts and ideas. Those would be, you need more, vocabulary and more abilities to talk about things that you think of and not that you can see. So more or less, like sometimes I find myself like, oh no, I know I use the word that's maybe like too much and they don't understand me. So I try to keep it simple, whatever that might mean for you. I don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Sometimes, I think we've all done it where we've been in a class and then it's like you go to say a word and you think, oh, they're not going to understand that word because it's going to be far too difficult, and even things like, so in this sentence, if we let's try and together kind of put this in a simpler format. Yeah, so I've got a sentence here. It says Google has launched a Wikipedia for nightlife that allows users to relive or piece together their nights out by sharing photos, memories, and tracks with fellow clubbers. In that one sentence, what do you guys think what words could be challenging? Emma, shall I come to you?
Yes, sorry, Rob. Yeah. There's a lot of challenging words in there. I sort of need to see it now because I've forgotten.
I was going to say, what I was going to do is I said I'll share my screen with you guys, and that way that's why I didn't put the camera on, because I thought I can show you the text, the two texts that I have. So you can see here, this is the first one, right? The first one that I read, and already you can see that it's a long. Can you let me know if you can't see the screen? But you can. It's already a really long text there for a P2, and with some of the vocabulary, I think this would take actually a very long time to go over. So here at the top of the page was the first sentence the sentence that I've just read. Yeah. From that, what do you think, or which vocab do you think would be the ones that they would struggle with?
I think the first word, launched, would be quite a struggle. Or pieced together, that wouldn't really make sense. It's kind of a fellow.
Yeah, fellow.
Yeah, archive, possibly framework. Memory bank.
Forming a virtual memory bank. There's lots of them. So we could try and simplify this already, right, together. So instead of saying something like Google has launched, Emma, what could we say instead of launched?
Created.
Yeah, already. Yeah, the Google created or has created.
Yeah, has created.
Yeah, even if we wanted to make it even easier, we could just say Google created a Wikipedia. That way we're just using the verb to create. We'll use it in the past simple with the ed, and most students at a P2 level already know, okay, if it has an ed, then it's the verb in the past, and at a P2 level, they're starting, they're starting to do the past simple. So I think something like Google created a Wikipedia for nightlife.
That allows the user.
I put you on the spot here. I know it's not easy to do in the moment, and it's something that actually, when you're writing the text or when you find in text, then obviously we can spend a little bit more time trying to do it, But I think it's something that that's good. So that Google created a Wikipedia for nightlife.
That allows users to not relive, but imagine, maybe or it's not quite the right verb though.
No, I was even thinking with the verb to allow, if we wanted to make it even easier, we could put that permits, because then it's similar in Spanish. So already then that's easier. So Google created a Wikipedia for nightlife that permits people instead of users, maybe people.
People, to imagine.
Yeah.
Because piece together, we just need something. Or relive. I mean, maybe relive would be okay.
Yeah, we can keep it in there.
Yeah. Their nights out by sharing, that's fine, photos, memories, and tracks with their fellow clubbers. I'm not sure if they would know fellow clubbers.
No, I think you could say, for example, with other people in the
yes,
club,
yeah.
even
Yeah,
if you wanted to,
yeah.
because fellow would be way too hard for a P2. That's more of like a P4, P5 level word. Clubbers, I mean, we could keep it. You could say they're people who go to who are going to the club, or you could just say people in the club. So Google created a Wikipedia for Nightlife that permits to share photos, memories, and tracks with other people in the club. And already, other people in the club, they can probably understand that, and already that's a million times easier just by making those changes. Again, like we could go through the whole thing and change it around, and it's something else. I'll do that in a bit. If I show you and I'll compare it with the other one that I was showing you, that was a text that Ben has done recently. Already, okay, the text is shorter, but you can see that the sentences are a lot shorter as well, and he's using the present simple, so he writes his ideas and opinions on many things. Now Trump has a problem. No, he cannot use the platform. They say Trump is dangerous. This has a big effect. So it's already shorter sentences with easier vocabulary, and I think this is definitely a lot easier to understand than the previous text that I was showing you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think if we could come to some form of maybe agreement amongst ourselves in terms of the tenses, what tenses we could use. So obviously the present simple, right? We can use the present simple to do the text. I don't know who else is in here. Sorry, Olga, how about yourself? If I come back to you and I'll show you this text, what other tenses do you think for a P2 level could be suitable?
In the second one.
In this text, I mean, in general, if we're speaking in general terms, what tenses? So we said for a P2 level, the present simple is okay. It's fine.
The second text is a B2 level text. It's quite appropriate, but the first one, to be honest, I think should be in a more advanced level, like present simple and the complicated formations that the sentences have there. It's a bit of a challenge for students, but this one is, I think, okay. I mean, vocabulary is okay. The sentences are short. The tenses are the easy ones. So this should be fine. I'm trying to remember while you were discussing. I'm trying to remember what website I used for some of my private students before. This was a few years ago, but there was this website where you could find the same text in different levels. It was really great. Like this text about Trump, for instance, if you clicked on A2 or B1, B2, it would give you exactly the same text, but with more difficult formations and vocabulary added. Yeah. So if I can find that, I'm going to share that with you guys.
Awesome. Yeah, because that'd be quite cool, because even for people not to see the difference in the level, I think is important. When I read this text, I read it at the start of the week when I was correcting it, and I was like, yes, I was really happy because I knew, okay, this is a P2 class. It's going to be in the P2 classes coming up. It's in next week's class, like I said, and I thought this is perfect, right? The vocabulary is correct. It's not too long. It's short sentences, I've just noticed a little one here, but I'll use it. Many people believe this. Full stop. They are very angry. Here it should be they attacked. So we can change that now. They attacked the US Capitol last week. It is an important government building. Super simple sentences, and you're still getting your point across, and the students are going to understand it. And then, the less time we spend trying to read through the text, the more time we can spend talking about it, right? So sometimes, you know, you have a P2 activity, and like I said, the topic is really cool, but actually, if you do the text, it's gonna take like 20 minutes alone, just going over the text and doing the vocabulary and explaining it, and you know, and it's we're gonna spend more time just doing that, and then it leaves us no time to actually talk about it, right? So the texts are there, the texts are there as a way to kind of prompt a discussion, right? So the text, you know, that's why there's the counter when we're creating it. It puts 150 words. Because
exactly, and I think this is the topic is also very relevant. It's very contemporary, and also it's a very good text, and it still does have a few challenges, although not too much. The only downside might be that the vocabulary is a bit too simple. Maybe most of the words are common words with Spanish, I guess. I mean, Spanish is very elementary at the moment, but still. But for instance, you still have words like ban and effect versus affect and so on. So there are still some, you know, points to improve, to focus on afterwards if you want to work on vocabulary with the students. So
absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the problems with P2 is, and again, maybe you disagree with me, but I think P2 level is actually one of the levels which has the biggest difference in students. So I think that's why sometimes it can be quite challenging to create the material, because if I think I've got some P2 students, and the difference in their level is crazy, because I've got one student who's just come up from an S1 to P2, and I've got a P2 student who is a P2 but is more or less ready to make that jump up to P3, and the difference between them two students is crazy. And I think it's maybe even wider than any other level. That difference between someone who's just become a P2 and someone who's ready to become a P3, the difference is crazy. And so that's why it can make it challenging. I think, you know, for the P5, then more or less the P5s are all very similar level, you know, or P4s or S1s, because they're all starting. So P2 level can be can have the widest variety in terms of level of students. As you mentioned, I think in this text, there are some words that they would still maybe find difficult. Ban, as you mentioned, ban could be quite difficult. But if we wanted, we could put something like prohibited or
No, but I think it's good to have, you know, a few challenges, not like the first text, which is full of challenges for a B2 student, but this one is, I think, very appropriate in that sense. And what you can do with mixed levels, maybe you can, because it allows discussion about something very daily, focus on the discussion so that both students can, you know, bring in their own contribution. The more advanced one can speak about, with using, you know, more advanced vocabulary, and the other one can still contribute with his knowledge and so on.
Absolutely. I think it's exactly like you mentioned. You can direct easier questions maybe for the weaker student, and more difficult questions for the higher student. The two students in question that I was talking about are actually in two separate classes, so they're not in the same group. But for sure, if they were in the same class, then you can use you can ask easier questions for the lower level and do it. And it's got, like we mentioned here, I think there's really good vocabulary. There's stuff like angry as well, and talking about, you know, and you can talk about the different feelings. I just think this, for me, is a very good kind of P2 text. Maybe we could tweak some things, but in general, I think for me, and I'm thinking of all my students, I could do this text with all of my P2 students. I think I would have no problem, because the language that's used is perfect. And you can see that this is not just a case of copy and pasting, that Ben has actually, that he's taken the text and he has made it easier. You know, he has spent time making it simpler, shortening the sentences, changing words, putting cognates and stuff like that, you know. Whereas again, if I go back to this one, I mean, it's just crazy, right? The difference.
Yeah,
and so
this one is really, I mean, the formations here, they're nice out by sharing photos and so on. Instead, you can just say you can share photos, you know.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Not an easy text for a B2 for sure.
No. And like I say, even here in the last sentence, Google will roll it out across the world. Like they're not going to understand that. And like I say, these two texts are just two random P2 classes I selected from next week, in different classes, and I just selected two of the texts that I have, and you know, we can clearly see the contrast that exists between if it is successful in London, Google will roll it out across the world. Like, I know my P2 students are not going to understand that, and it's going to take a lot of time trying to explain something like that. Here again, they will post their own in the form of written memories. You know, something they got. You know, they you know, at a P2 level, they don't know about past participles and stuff like that, you know, really, maybe. So you know, you've got to be very, very careful with the tenses we use, and also in terms of contractions as well. If I go back to Ben's text here, he's not really used too many contractions, right? So it is an important government building. He cannot instead of he can't, you know, and so it just simplifies it that little bit more. For here, and I think, you know, you can clearly see the contrast between the two texts that we have. So I was thinking, in terms, if I go back to the tenses, we mentioned the present simple. I think we could include the past simple as well. Yeah, you know, especially with regular verbs. I think, like I say, a lot of the time the students, when they start to recognize, okay, for the regular verbs in the past, we're going to use the ed, and so something like that, you know, you can start to introduce. And then also for the future, like will, just, you know, using will plus the verb, right? So using the will in the future. I believe, off the top of my head, I think there's some activities for P2, right? The difference between will and going to. So, you know, you could do it, but if you wanted to simplify the text, then maybe we could just stick to using will, because I think students, when they recognize will, they think, okay, future, and they've got it. No, he will go, he will eat, I will swim, no, and stuff like that, and they know that's the future tense. So even just using will. So for me, I think present simple, past simple, and will basically the three kind of tenses that I always use. You know, sometimes you see like the present perfect and everything, and they just haven't got that level yet. You know, and it's a bit contradictory to the grammar, the structure activities that are in the class, because you'll have structure activities that maybe is focused on will versus going to, or the past simple of regular verbs, or the past simple of irregular verbs. And then you read a text in a topic activity, and it'll have like the future perfect in there, or something like that, and it's a complete kind of contradiction to what's going on with the structure activities. So I think we all need to be careful.
Actually, I think of that. Yeah,
it's. I mean, here there's one example. But yeah, just be careful with the tenses. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are dedicating time to creating material, but when we are, all try to just keep it with those three tenses. You know, now I know some of you obviously know Remila's mentioned in the past that I do some activity correction, and for me, and this is the reason why I asked if we could do something like this. You know, I read a text and I will send it back to the teacher and ask them to simplify the text, and they change one or two things, and it comes back and it still has all the wrong the difficult tenses, and it still has very, very complex vocabulary. And remember, with the topic activities, the idea is to get the students speaking as much as possible and to have a debate, you know, and often you don't even need a text with the topic activities. Just showing a photo can spark a debate, or just watching a very, very short video, you know. So if you're spending, you know, if we're all, you know, dedicating 15 to 20 minutes per activity in a class, if you have to spend 20 minutes, which, let's be honest, if I was with my P2 classes, doing this text would take me probably 20 minutes to go through it and get them to understand, and then that leaves no time for the debate, or that leaves no time for them, to students, to give their opinions, which is the point. Practicing the fluency is the whole point the topic activities, right? To get them talking, to get them debating. Okay, you think this and you think that. Fight it out. Have an argument. Go for it. And so, I don't want to be spending 20 minutes. And maybe this text that you can see on the screen. I mean, I haven't read it properly and kind of looked into too much about what it is, but this is probably quite a cool idea. It's cool. It's something that I can think of some students now that I have that would love talking about this type of thing. The problem is it comes to the class and I can't use the text because it's too difficult, and it can be quite frustrating, sometimes. So I think, bearing in mind using kind of the correct tenses, keeping the vocabulary short, using cognates, and maybe not using so many contractions already, that can make a big, and shorter sentences already, that can make a big difference to all of us, because we're all going to have P2 texts that are good and correct for that level, I don't know if has anyone got anything that they'd like to mention, any kind of comments at the moment that they would like to, or any questions or any doubts or anything?
Hi, Rob. I'd like to bring in an idea that could be useful, which I've done in the past.
Yeah, sure.
And that is, there are lots of exercises out there. I've got tons of webs that I could share, where, for example, when the target was to fill the gap with, say, present simple and present perfect, for example. But you know how you've got these type of exercises where it's one sentence, then another sentence, and that's not the purpose. What I did was looking for the ones that were actually a text. And what I did was filling up the gap myself. That way the text is already created and I've just done the right conjugation. Why? Because these exercises tend to be very simple, since for example, it would be a P2 level student, the one that would actually do an exercise about present simple, present perfect. What I'm trying to say is that looking into that type of exercises, if the teacher fills it in, it tends to be a text that's quite simple, structure, vocab, etc., because the exercise within it's the purpose of the exercise. And then you can change a few things here and there. And I think the job is much easier that way, because all the vocab included corresponds to the right level because of the structure. So you turn a structure exercise into a text, basically.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
pretty good.
Yeah, I've never really, you see, that's why it's always good. And I always say on the Friday inductions, and I always say it's really good to do these things just to have a talk, because we can share ideas like that. Now, that's something I've never even thought about, it hasn't even crossed my mind. And already I'm like, that's a cool idea. Why haven't I thought about that? And, it could save us all a lot of time, and it's perfect. That's perfect,
Yeah, that's a very good idea for any structure. Instead of proposing that exercise, the teacher fills it in, and there you have the text created at the right level, which is, I think, what we are pretty much talking about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, that's why, like I said, I think it's always important to have these talks, because we share ideas and we think of things. Now, that I think is an amazing idea, and I'm thank you for that, And so it's something that I've never thought about, maybe nobody else has ever thought about, where you've shared it, and now it's going to help and benefit everybody, because and finally the end product, because when creating material, I now think, oh, maybe I'll find something like that and I can use that, and then it's automatically, as you say, for the correct level, for the correct class. Yeah, I'm going to write that one down. That's a perfect idea, brilliant idea.
I can send you some documents I've got, Rob, if you're interested in.
Yeah, for sure.
That example.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be cool, and already we can all think about that. What about anybody else? Does anybody else have any ideas in terms of what we've been talking about so far, or anything that they'd like to comment, or it's all okay? Yeah, perfect. One of the other things I was thinking of, while we're on the topic of activities for the lower levels, was something about, I wanted to see what you guys thought about, is if there's anything that we shouldn't cover. I mean, is there anything that is, in terms of topic activities, is there anything that is too controversial, for example, that maybe we should avoid talking about? Georgina, I don't know if are you still there? Do you have any Any opinion on that?
Yeah.
Like, is there something too controversial that we shouldn't talk about with students?
Well, no, but this is just a little detail, okay? Because I've been working on correcting activities, and sometimes, well, it has nothing to do, I don't know, but sometimes the concept checking questions, they're in the teachers tab. And so I realized that they're much better in the student tab because they can read while I'm asking them, and it's better for them. It's, you know, it works better. If not, they have to like first understand what I'm saying and then go back to the text, and it takes me longer. So I don't know if it's a little, you know, detail here, but that's the only tiny little thing I noticed about regarding reading.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Again, I'm writing that down now, and I'm just making a little list because I think, yeah, that's actually a good point for the lower levels. I think for the higher levels, it's fine. You know, it's not too much of a problem to have it, but for the lower levels, again, yeah, I agree with it. I think that's a good idea, actually. I think to have there, and they can see when you're reading the questions, just at the bottom of the text, right? You could have the CCQs there for the students.
Yeah, the other thing I do is like with lower levels, they read for themselves, you know, so because they're actually, the exercise is to understand what they're reading. But then with the higher levels, they read out loud because they don't have that many difficulties. So then I can also correct some sort of pronunciation. But for the lower levels, it'd be like read silently, and 2, keep the questions visible.
Yeah. Or you read to the students, right? What you can do is you read to the students, and they can follow that where they're hearing the pronunciation of the words as well.
Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I did that yesterday. With girls or teenage girls. Yeah.
Because I think for the lower levels, you know, one of the most difficult problems in terms of pronunciation of students is the ed, right? At the end, when with the verbs, no, so you'll often hear students say play it or walk it or watch it, etc., and they pronounce the ed. And so I think getting the students, especially for the lower levels like that, getting them used to hearing us read the text to them, and it gets them used to the pronunciation. So it's something that I try to do with the lower levels. Is okay, you're going to follow the text, I'm going to read and just listen to the pronunciation and see how I'm pronouncing, because it's
definitely definitely, because when they read it in their minds, they get to associate the spelling with the sounds. That's exactly exercise. Yeah,
because they might be reading the text and they understand it all, but in their head they've read play it, for example, and then they get used to thinking about play it, and then they start saying it, and then it can be difficult. So I think the sooner we can get them used to hearing the verbs, and I'm just using this as an example, but with the ed, the sooner we can get them used to hearing the correct way that they're pronounced, then the better. So I think it's always good to get it, to get students to follow the text and to listen to the pronunciation, and also then try to focus on the meaning as well, because sometimes, and this applies to all levels, but a student, if they read if I get them to read the text to me, they're so focused on getting the pronunciation correct that actually they have no idea what they've just read. They have no idea.
Yeah. So like if they're reading, we're emphasizing on comprehension. So, I wouldn't challenge them that much if they're lower levels.
Yeah. I think I have some students, and then they want to read, and often you'll find that students do want to read. They'll say to me, Rob, can I, I'm going to read the text. Or sometimes I put a text on the screen and they start reading automatically. They just throw themselves into it, and kind of that's it. But I think from time to time, it's good just to, especially if the text you think is going to be a little bit challenging for that student, then I think, okay, no, I'm going to read, and you just follow. And it allows you to hear the pronunciation and also focus on the meaning of the text, rather than all your attention going on getting the pronunciation right, but having no understanding of what you've just read. So yeah, I think it's something that applies to all levels. Another thing that you can do, and I do it with students sometimes, is If I think the text is not going to be too difficult for them, then I don't put the text on the screen and I read it to them once, and just to practice the comprehension as well. So I'll read it to them, they can't see it. And then after we read it, I try to get them to kind of, okay, what did you understand from that, you know? And then afterwards, once we've done it, I put the text on the screen and I can read it again, or they get them to read it, and then we can go over the text and they can see it, you know. But sometimes this applies to all levels, like I said, because I've done it with higher levels as well, that to read the text and not put it on the screen, and get them to do it. Now, obviously, if you see one of those typical texts that sometimes crop up that's like 300 words, then I don't do that, you know, because it's going to take too much time, it's going to be too long, it's going to slow the pace of the class down. But if you have a good, short, straight to the point text, sometimes that's a little activity that I do. I don't do it all the time, but from time to time with students, you know, just to get them practicing and just say, okay, we're going to practice your comprehension a little bit now. So I'm going to read the text, but I'm not going to show you it, you know, until after. That's something that I try to do from time to time in my classes as well. What else? Has anybody else got anything that they would like to mention in terms of what we talked about, or any other ideas, any other thing that we could as a group come together and say, okay, for those people who are creating texts for P2 level, this is the rules. You keep the present, you past simple will, fewer contractions, CCQs at the bottom. Is there anything else that we can think of as a group that we could that we can have, just so we've got like a list of kind of do's and don'ts, you know, for lower level activities for the P2s? I'm having to think as well.
Maybe, and I'd say if we really want to think about this, I would try to avoid avoiding like a prefix and suffixes and very, you know, because you have like an adjective and you do it the negative form, but then you transform it into invariably. So, you know, the thing of word formation, like of building complex words through that, maybe could also be a little, you know, issue, because if I have like likely, and they're like, oh, but you know, what is like and what is likely? Like, oh, you know, so that this could also,
I mean, that just confuses.
And it could be, you know, a bad habit for people like me, maybe, that I just tend to talk and go on. So
no, well, I think this is one of the most difficult skills that for teachers, along with correction. I think grading language and simplifying your language is actually it can be one of the most difficult things to do for teachers, and one of the most difficult skills to learn. Is like, okay, I need to say this, or I want to say this. How am I going to simplify it enough that the students are going to understand it, you know? And so trying to just keep it simple. And that's where, like I said, those of you who have Spanish have an advantage, that you know the words that are similar, right? So automatically there's a little bit of an advantage there, because you know if I say communication, they're gonna probably understand, because it's very similar in Spanish, you know. But I think, yeah, it's like I say, it's one of the most challenging, one of the most difficult skills is grading language. And I think actually the best way to do it is actually just by being in the class with students, you know. And so I think the way that I learned to grade my language was actually through experience of being in front of low level students and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And I think, okay, I did this last time and the students still didn't get it, so I'll try this. And then you try another word and they get it straight away, and you think, right. And so through experience, you realize the ways to explain something, the ways that work and the ways that don't work. And I think, you know, being in front of a low-level student, you know, I remember when I first got here and I had no Spanish at all, and I was in front of a group of doctors who had basically no English, and so we had no common language amongst ourselves, you know. And that was, for me, I always remember those classes with them, because it was the way that I learned and the way that I was like, okay, so how can I really simplify it and keep it and use gestures and use pictures and you know, all that kind of stuff. And as I say, as my Spanish improved, or as I started learning Spanish and it improved, then I became more aware of the cognates, and that helped me even more. but yeah, I think it's one of those things, actually being with the students, in front of the students, and having them and just that real life practice, obviously you're gonna improve and doing ideas. So I think if we keep these goals that we've kind of set, and I've written them down, if we all try to start doing that, then it will then it's going to help us all. Georgina, I've just seen your message, about so thank you for your input. Yeah, much appreciated.
Yeah. Okay.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thanks to all of you guys.
See you soon. Yeah. Okay, and the final thing, and then I'll let us all go. One of the final things that I wanted to mention is, remember that we've all got the button that allows us to create to change in real time the text. Yeah, and so for those of you who don't know, and I'll do it with this one. If you see a text and it has a typo, or it has something that's a mistake, or something you would like to add, or something that you want to remove, if you go to the top left-hand corner here, this pencil, it will bring up 2 more little pencils on here, which allow me to change either the title or the text. And by clicking on this pencil here, it will open up in a platform that is that you may or may not be familiar with, but it allows me to change the text. And so there was a little here, the little text. So I'm going to change that to they attacked, because it's in the past. I think that will be okay. And I'll change this to banned, because there we are, and you can save it, and then the text is saved, and that will have changed for everybody in the system. So whenever you see a typo or anything, like I said, and you want to change it, first click on the pencil here in the top left-hand corner, and then on the pencil here, always remembering to save it when you've made the changes. Yeah, and that's something we can all do with all activities. Yeah.
Rob, that's really good to know. I didn't know that. Sometimes I notice typos in, like, if it's just a PDF kind of, like, you see where Trump is.
Yeah.
Like, if there's text in that, and then you can't edit it, can you? Even if
because it's like a photo, right?
Yeah, like, often I find that those things have typos in them, and it's a and I'm not entirely sure how to change it. Yeah.
No, well, I guess if it's like a photo that's been put into it, if I'm thinking of, tell me if I'm incorrect, but you're thinking like you have like maybe a gap fill exercise, and it's got 10 or 20 questions, 10 or 20 examples, but it's like if they've not been written out individually. Yeah. They've been copied in a thing. I mean, to be honest, teachers shouldn't really be doing that in the first place. I think they should be writing it themselves here, so they can use some inspiration and stuff like that, but thinking of their own examples and writing their own examples, not just copy and pasting from Google Images, something that they found online. So, and that's something I've noticed a little bit, but I think it tends to be lots of the older activities that have kind of crept on through into the newer system. But it's something that that from now on, I'm like, no, you can't just do that. That's I think it's best to write it, and they all, they could take the examples and use a couple of the examples or whatever, but always to write it themselves, not just paste the whole picture,
Yeah. Okay. So if you see anything like that, we have to sort of write it out again.
Yeah. I would say, because it makes it easier then, and it makes it easier for the system, because then when you're in the class, you're not just putting the photo. You've got everything written out, and we've used the platform. So yeah, I think it's something that teachers should be doing anyway. And like I say, if you see a typo, then remember you can change it in real time. These 2 little changes that I put there, the ED and the NED on band, that now will be changed in everybody's classes for next week, right? So it's not just for me, it changes for everybody in the whole system. So so be careful. Sometimes I've heard teachers think that, okay, I'll just change it and it only changes for me, but it doesn't. It changes for everybody as well. So if you just be careful with what you're adding or taking away, but yeah, that's now done, and it's very easy, and it allows us to change it in real time. And now for this text that I was showing you, the harder text, I will like I say, that was just in a random P2 class that I've taken from next week, and I saw this and I thought it was just a good contrast to show the two differences, right? That one's going to be really difficult, and so I'll this afternoon I'll spend a bit of time simplifying this one so that that benefits everybody, and having it, you know, an actual a P2 text that we can all use next week, because you may have this in your class, right? If you give me the option, do you want this or this, I'm choosing this one all day long, right, to have in my text, because we can read that in 5 minutes and then spend 10 minutes talking about it and discussing and moving on to the other parts of the activity. And I've noticed with Ben, actually, he's done a couple of P2 texts recently, and the other one was very similar to this one, very straight to the point, very easy, and you know, that's perfect, right? Any other things that anyone wants to mention, or we can kind of wrap it up there. I have a class in 10 minutes or so I haven't got too much longer. But is there anything that anybody would like to mention? I think it's something that when I spoke to Radmila, we mentioned we can come back to in the future, no? And maybe in a couple of weeks or in a month, and hopefully things, what I hope is that people will, if they haven't been able to come now, will be able to watch it, to look at the ideas. I'm gonna write our ideas down, and then hopefully I'll get Radmila to maybe post them there, and then hopefully the P2 activities going forward will be easier for us all to use, because like I say, sometimes I find it really, really frustrating when you've got a P2 class and you've got a couple of topic activities and they're both just way too hard to use, and it's like the topic's good but I can't use the text, and so maybe you find yourself talking about it but without the aid of the text. Yeah, so hoping this is something that will improve for all of us going forward, and we'll all have easier and better texts for the P2 level. Yeah. Cool.
Hey guys, hi Rob.
Hi, Maria. I don't know how long you were there. I haven't been watching.
Not much. I joined halfway through, so I'm sure that what I heard was great and what I watched was great. But I can see that there are two people that want to mention something.
Sorry, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't seen that. There we are. Because it was Charles.
Yeah, just two things. I'm gonna watch from the beginning because, like Radmila, I kind of jumped in after a class in the middle. Seemed interesting, but I definitely missed a lot. To clarify something, Rob, you said when you correct an activity, it corrects it in real time, but then I thought I heard you say it would be corrected for everybody the next week. Did I hear that correctly?
No, sorry. I was saying that because these two texts that I've brought up on the screen are texts. I took two random P2 texts from two different classes next week. And so what I meant to say, now that I've changed the text a little bit now, it changes instantly, but it will be changed for everybody's classes next week because they'll appear in next week's material.
Valid.
You might see this. So yeah, sorry, that was I explained at the beginning, but yeah.
Yes, I missed
don't worry. But no, it changes in real time.
Okay, perfect. I was a little confused, but understood. And the other thing, I heard you guys speaking about ED pronunciation when I joined in. What I do is a little exercise. I just ask my students to invent answers if they have to, but answer affirmatively. When did you help him? I helped him last week. When did you fix it? I fixed it yesterday. And what I usually do, 4 drills. First the T sound, then the id sound, then the D sound, and then of course the 4th drill is a mixture of the 3 different sounds. And I find that to be very helpful for them.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. Actually, again, you get some used to speaking using the ED, because I think it's in terms of pronunciation, it's one of the most challenging things for students when they're starting out. They really struggle with when you pronounce wanted versus played, not play it.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, something like that's great.
And then I also, I tell them that they're probably Spanish because most of my students are, but they learned Spanish. I learned English before school, before books, because of repetition. So I always say it in Spanish, les machaco. I compact a lot of exercises very quickly into 1 hour. So they get a lot of practice. And of course, if they mispronounce it, then I say, oh, okay, you helped him yesterday. So not only do they hear my correct pronunciation, I guess, but then I also get them to mimic, to imitate it.
Yeah. It gets through hearing you say it and registers with them, right?
Yes, I usually do the first couple so they hear the sound that I'm going for. You know, if it's I fixed it yesterday, but then if they make a mistake, then I will repeat it, so that they, you know, like Radmila says, input output. So I try to get, you know, I try to get as much as I can into a limited amount of time, because unfortunately our students don't have the time that we had to learn our native tongues when we were children. But thank you. It sounded like a good meeting, and later tonight I will watch the first half.
Yeah, perfect. Like I say, it was just the idea to try to help everybody in the end. It helps everybody because, as I mentioned, most of us, you know, we've all got P2 classes, and there's nothing worse than having a P2 class. You look at the two topics and you can't use either text really because they're both too difficult, you know. But yeah, so hopefully it will be beneficial not only for us now but for everybody going forward, you know, and hopefully we'll see a difference pretty quickly. I don't know, did Olga have something? Did you? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, when you were mentioning the things we can add on the list to simplify on difficult texts, I was just looking at the previous one, which had this roll it out
yeah, at the bottom here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not only a relatively uncommon phrasal verb, but it's also a phrasal word with a pronoun in it. So maybe we can avoid, you know, using phrasal verbs with an object pronoun, because it makes it more difficult for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, phrasal verbs in general for a P2 level, you know, are difficult, you know. And there's some of the common ones that we can use, and we start, you know, they might know at that level. But yeah, something like this last sentence says it all for me. If it is successful in London, Google will roll it out across the world. Like, I think of all of my P2 students, whether they're, as I mentioned before, a P2 student who's just come up from S1 or a P2 student who's ready to go to P3, that big difference. Even the ones who are really, you know, more or less on the verge of being for P3 wouldn't understand that last sentence, I don't think.
True. Having said that, they might guess the meaning from the sentence, because it's actually pretty straightforward when you look at across the world and if successful, but still, on its own is a difficult affirmation.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to go. I have a class in literally in a minute, so I don't know, Radmila, do you want to finish up, or we can wrap up there? I know Maricarmen, you had something to say.
I just wanted to quickly say, to optimize the use of the text, for example, for the pronunciation, as you were saying before, because the Spanish students tend to read, for example, like you say, play it. To have on the English tab, for example, if we have a text in past simple, if we add verbs that have the same sound like laid, but they can't see it, if you ask them verbally, can you say laid? Because they can't see the word, they will pronounce it properly, laid. And it's the same as played, but the problem is because they actually see it played. So sometimes making the student make the sound without seeing the word helps them come back to the word and say, hey, I can say it. It's only when I read the word that I get caught in reading it literally, as in Spanish, just to have a bit of a maybe deeper use of the text. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because often, you know, when in terms of all pronunciation, when the students see it written, they're trying to pronounce every single letter, right? And they can't do it. I always think of the example with comfortable, comfortable. If you hide the word and say, don't think about the word, just listen to my pronunciation, listen to the way I say it, they get it quite quickly, you know. But when they see it written, then they really struggle because they're trying to pronounce every single letter. And that's something that I do, to hide the word from them so they can't see it and say, just listen to me, you know. Cool. Well, like I said, I have a class now, so I need to go. So I don't know, Radmila, if you want to wrap up, or we can finish. We can finish there.
was great, guys. Let's go and have a nice class, and we'll organize more of these. Thank you, guys.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do I need to do anything, or Radmila, can you deal with the recording? Or
yeah, it will be as soon as you leave it, it will be downloaded there. You don't have to do anything.
I can just
make
cancel
sure
the call, right?
Yeah, cancel the call, and if you want before that, cancel the recording.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Cheers. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Thanks for your help.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.